Hello guys, croeso mawr, croeso nôl. Welcome back, a big welcome to you to the Mates Weekly video. And this week we're looking at King Saul. Now King Saul is famously the very first king of Israel. But he's also equally famous for being very paranoid, a man who couldn't really put God first in his life, didn't seem to have the ability to do that. He was a man of angst and had a massive vendetta against David. Now you can read a lot about King Saul over a lot of chapters. I think 1 Samuel 9 to 31 is the range of chapters. So it might be helpful for you to have a little bit of a scan read over some of the stories in there, pick out the stories that maybe interest you and get an idea of what Saul was actually like. And then we'll come back and we'll look a bit more in detail at what was going on in the life of Saul and how that can inform and teach and help us here in the 21st century. Okay, as I said in the intro, Saul was the very first king of Israel. Now, it started out really, really well for him. It says in the Bible that he stood out head and shoulders above every other man in the nation. He was strapping, he was fit, he was noble, and he had integrity. He was a man who loved God, and therefore he was called by God to be the king of Israel. Now, the role had been designed by God to be fulfilled under the authority of the prophet Samuel. And this is where it began to go downhill very quickly for Saul. Saul had very many attributes. He was brave in the battle. He would always go into the battle to win, and he led from the front, which is what so many of us want to be like. But he didn't have that great a teachable heart, a teachable spirit. In fact, you could almost say, well, not almost, you could say easily that he had a disobedient heart. And he became very fixated on the role that he had and the authority that he had. One good example of this is that when he was with his men and they were waiting for Samuel to do an offering to the Lord, he got really impatient and he got fed up of waiting. And so therefore he made the offering to God himself. And when Samuel came, he reminded Saul that actually you did not have the right to do that. You did not have the right to make the offering to the Lord. That was for me to do. And that spelt the end of Saul's dynasty, really before it had even started. Another episode was when he went into battle, he routed the Amalekites. Once again, he was brave in the battle, and because of his bravery and because of the way he led, the Israelites won that battle very easily. But they were also told at that time that they were to destroy everything to do with the Amalekites. And Saul and his men saw the cattle, the sheep, and all of that stuff, and they decided to hide it away and keep it. And when Samuel came along, famously he says, is that the bleating of sheep that I can hear? Have you kept the cattle? Have you kept the sheep? You were told to destroy everything. Now here's the thing with Saul. As much as he was head and shoulders above everybody else and had a presence about him that made him very kingly, he also had this flaw in his character, and that is that he probably wanted to please people more than he wanted to please God. We said this before, haven't we? That one of the things that we're called to do as men of God, men who are following Jesus, is to live for an audience of one, to do the right thing, even when the right thing is inconvenient. And Saul struggled with this. And therefore, rather than his family being a royal dynasty and ultimately Jesus coming through his line, that all changed because of his disobedient heart. In later years, he became very paranoid when he knew that David was going to be the successor to him on his throne. And he hunted him down and he wanted to kill him. And he would believe that David was scheming against him, even though David was really loyal to Saul right the way through his life. Paranoia, a bad conscience, a broken spirit, that were all the things that Saul ended up with. And it's a warning to us as followers of Jesus that if we don't put Jesus first, if we don't live for an audience of one and do the right thing, even when it's not the convenient thing for us to do, if we don't live well and if we don't live with obedient hearts to God, then it can all turn sour and it can go downhill faster than a bobsled team. So, guys, the call out this morning, today, is this. When you choose to follow Jesus, do it with all of your heart. Even though it is hard to do it, get up every morning, read his word, spend time in prayer with God, and do the rest of your day God's way. Don't have a disobedient heart. Don't think more highly of yourself than you should. And ultimately, only do what God tells you to do. That way, you'll live your life with a clear conscience. You'll live your life with the blessing and favour of God. And ultimately, you will receive a hero's welcome when you breathe your final breath and go into the kingdom forever. Have a great week, guys. Think on Saul. Think on the ways in which he teaches us that we ultimately will pay the price if we don't do life God's way, and have an absolutely fantastic week.